I don't expect you to believe what I'm about to share, but if you're someone who books Airbnbs or cheap motels for weekend getaways, maybe you'll think twice after this. My name is Jordan Monroe. I'm a freelance travel writer. I used to run a small blog called Cozy Corners, where I'd review hidden gems, cabins, lodges, sometimes old historical homes you could rent for a night or two. Most of them were charming, some even beautiful. But there was one place, one night that I've never written about. I never planned to, until last week when the email came. Let me take you back to October 2022, the peak of fall in upstate New York. I had been invited to write about a recently restored 19th century estate-turned-rental near the Catskills. The listing was vague but enticing. Private room in Heritage Manor, surrounded by forest, formerly owned by a clockmaker. I booked 2 nights. When I arrived, I was greeted by the host, a woman in her 60s named Eleanor. She was polite, a little stiff, and spoke with the kind of vocabulary that made you think she either read a lot of old books or spent too much time alone. She gave me a key, warned me not to go into the East Wing, under restoration, she said, and showed me to my room upstairs. Now here's where things get strange. The room was small but quaint. Antique furniture, one tall, narrow window, and a grandfather clock in the corner that ticked softly but was stuck at 3:07. I thought it was decorative. The walls were lined with aged wallpaper, beige, floral, curling at the edges, and above the bed, a painting of a man with no face, not abstract, just blank. He wore a black coat and held a pocket watch, which seemed almost painted too clearly compared to the rest of the piece. That first night, I fell asleep around 11. At precisely 3:07 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the clock ticking. It wasn't soft anymore. It was loud, violent, rhythmic, and it was coming from behind the wall. Now I know old houses creak, clocks make noise, wood settles. I told myself that. I really did. I turned on the lamp. The clock in the corner still read 3:07. I looked around. Nothing out of place. But something felt wrong. The air was heavy, like the whole room had dropped in pressure. Then I noticed the painting. The faceless man. His head was turned. Not just a little, it was facing the bed now. I jumped out of bed, knocked over my suitcase, and ran out into the hallway. Empty, silent. Even the grandfather clock at the far end of the hall was dead quiet. I went downstairs to find Eleanor. I didn't care if it was 3 a.m. I needed to talk to someone. But when I reached the foyer, something stopped me in my tracks. The front door was wide open. No wind, no footsteps, no sound. Just cold autumn air blowing in. And standing at the tree line, barely illuminated by the porch light, was a figure. A tall, motionless silhouette, wearing a black coat. I slammed the door shut, locked it, went back upstairs and spent the rest of the night sitting in the hallway with every light on. By morning, Eleanor acted like nothing was wrong, claimed I must have had a bad dream. I tried to leave that day, but she told me the only road out was blocked due to construction. I checked. She was right. But that night, everything got worse. And the room was watching me. I spent most of the next day walking the perimeter of the house. There really was only one narrow road out, now blocked by construction equipment and men in reflective vests who didn't even look up when I tried asking when it would clear. It felt staged, like they were just there. I don't know how to describe it. Their faces were blank, like someone had hired mannequins and told them to mime construction workers. Back inside, I tried to avoid the room, but Eleanor insisted. She said, "You booked that room, Mr. Monroe. We don't like to shuffle guests about unless there's a death in the family." That last part wasn't even followed by a smile or a chuckle, just a stare. So I went back. This time I inspected the walls, especially where the ticking had come from. I noticed a faint seam, like someone had once sealed off a part of the room. It didn't match the rest of the wallpaper. I knocked. Hollow. Then I pressed my ear to it. There was something. Not ticking anymore. It was scratching. Faint. Deliberate, like nails moving in slow, careful circles on the inside. I froze. That was no mouse. No rat. I sat back on the bed, keeping my eyes on that wall, and that's when I saw it. The clock, still stuck at 3:07, but the hands were slowly moving, both of them dragging forward like they were pushing through thick syrup. And just as the minute hand touched the 8, I heard a sharp metallic click inside the wall, and the seam opened. Only an inch, enough to show blackness behind it, not shadow, not absence of light, but a black that almost felt alive. I leapt forward and tried to push it closed, but it wouldn't budge. I tried not to panic. I didn't even want to see what was back there. I just dragged a chair in front of it and sat there. Hours passed. At some point, I don't remember when, I blinked, and it was night again. 3:07 a.m. Tick, tick. The air got cold. The scratching began again, but this time from inside the room. I stood, slow and stiff, turning toward the painting. The faceless man was gone, not turned, gone. The frame was still there, but empty. And I swear to you, I heard breathing behind me, not heavy, just close, warm. I turned sharply. Nothing, except now the clock ticked in sync with something in the hallway. Footsteps, steady, closer, coming toward my room. I locked the door, and from the other side, I heard a whisper. Time to open the wall. The whisper outside the door. Time to open the wall? Wasn't a voice I recognized. It wasn't Eleanor. It wasn't even human sounding exactly. It had this strange, hollow echo to it, like it wasn't spoken into the hallway but from somewhere, deeper, like it came through an old speaker or a drain pipe from miles away. I didn't move for what felt like a full minute. Then came the knock. Not on the door, on the wall. 3 soft, precise knocks, right where the seam had opened the night before. The chair I'd used to block it had been moved. I didn't hear it move. It just wasn't there anymore. It was across the room, upside down. I didn't scream. Not yet. Maybe I was too scared to even make a sound. I pressed my ear to the wall again. The scratching had stopped, but I could hear something on the other side. Not movement, breathing, shallow and slow, not loud, but unmistakable. Suddenly, the grandfather clock in the room groaned. Yes, groaned. Not ticked, not chimed. It sounded like something was inside it, pushing outward. The wood flexed, the glass fogged. Something tapped from the inside. I backed toward the bed. That's when the lights flickered, and not just the bulb overhead. Every source of light, even the glow from my phone screen, dimmed as if the house itself was exhaling. I made a choice then, a stupid one maybe, but I couldn't just stand there and wait for whatever was behind the wall to come through. I grabbed my duffel bag and bolted down the hallway, but the layout had changed. There was no staircase, just a long, narrow corridor of identical doors, no windows, no lights, just flickering candles along the walls that I swear hadn't been there before. I tried opening doors, all locked. The air grew warmer, but not comforting warm, like the heat from inside a dying animal, and the smell, burnt copper, like old coins boiled in vinegar. I was about to turn back when I saw it, a figure standing at the end of the hallway, still, watching, not Eleanor. It had no face, just like the painting, and it was holding the pocket watch, the same one from the portrait. It lifted its hand and opened the watch. Tick. The sound filled the entire corridor, echoing unnaturally. Then the walls began to shift. Doors vanished. The hallway grew longer. The figure took one step forward. I ran. I don't know how long I ran or how I got back to the room, but when I did, the painting was back. The faceless man in his place. Except now, the watch in his hand was open, and the time on it was 3:07. The clock ticked once, and the wall behind me opened all the way. The wall didn't just open, it unfolded, like something organic, peeling itself back, revealing not bricks or insulation but a narrow passageway, curved like a throat. The surface inside wasn't wood or stone. It pulsed subtly, breathing, moist. I should have run, but the room behind me started to change. The air grew thick, the smell, rot and mildew but sharper now, like a morgue's breath, and the floorboards began to bend upward behind me, curling like burnt paper. The room was collapsing. I stepped into the passage. The second I crossed the threshold, the wall sealed shut behind me with a fleshy sound that made my skin crawl. It was pitch black. No sound, no light, only my own breath, my heartbeat, and beneath that, a distant ticking. I walked. I don't know how long I walked. Minutes, hours. Then the corridor widened into a room, stone-lined but ancient and wet, like a crypt that never belonged in the world above. In the center was a wooden chair facing away from me. Someone was sitting in it. Their hair was long, gray. It was me. Not just someone who looked like me. It was me. Same shirt, same scratch on my arm from earlier that day. He turned slightly and whispered something I'll never forget. "You're the one that didn't leave. I warned you not to stay in that room." Then I began to cough, violently. He looked up at me with hollow, bleeding eyes and said, "It needs another." Before I could even blink, he melted, literally, into a pool of blood and clock gears. And in that blood, I saw the reflection of Eleanor's face, except it wasn't her. The eyes were too black, the smile too wide. She whispered from nowhere and everywhere, "You're home now, Jordan." The floor beneath me gave way, and I fell. But I didn't land in the hotel. I landed in room 307, but it wasn't the same. Everything was perfectly clean now. No cracks in the walls, no blood, just that same painting. The faceless man was now staring straight out of the frame, and his face was mine. I tried to scream when I saw my own face in the painting, but no sound came out. I touched my throat, my lips, my chest. I was dry inside, as if something had scooped the air out of me, carved me hollow like a pumpkin. The hotel room looked exactly like it had when I arrived, except sterile, airless, fake, like a replica of a room, not the real thing. The bed was made. The window showed nothing but a blank fog, no trees, no road, no sky, just white. I opened the door. Hallway, not the same. This hallway was pristine. All the doors were open, and inside every room I saw someone staring at a wall, unmoving, pale, as if they'd been sitting there forever. Men, women, old, young, none of them blinked. Their walls all had small seams, like mine. That's when it hit me. This was the fate of everyone who had stayed too long. They weren't guests. They were part of it. The hotel doesn't trap you. It uses you. You become part of the structure. A story, a warning, a new face in a painting for the next unfortunate soul who wanders in. And the ones who watch the wall, they're not waiting for rescue. They're listening, because something is always whispering on the other side. And it's always hungry. I turned to run and slammed right into Eleanor. She smiled, but now her teeth were far too many, like a shark's, or something older. "We don't check out, Jordan," she said softly. "We welcome." I ran again, through door after door after door, rooms repeating, clocks all reading 3:07, paintings watching me, walls breathing. Eventually, I came to the lobby. Same old desk, same fireplace, only now every portrait on the walls had my face. In one of them, I was smiling, in another, crying, one screaming, one just staring, blank and defeated. And in the center of the lobby, there was a mirror, but I wasn't in it. There was no reflection, just a blank void. And slowly, that void began to smile. You've been listening to The Room That Watches. If you made it this far, maybe something is watching you now too. If this story chilled you to the bone, subscribe to Screams for more true-style horror. No frills, just fear. And remember, some rooms don't let you leave. They let you in.